What is up, Four Eyed fans? How are you all doing today? I'm Jorge Edwards, and welcome to Fourth and Frames, the fantasy football podcast for fantasyandframes.com. I am joined by basically the three amigos are back together. We got Nate Markham, we got Brian Ford. How you guys doing? Brian, let's start with you.
Not too bad. Not too bad. Getting used to getting back to work. I teach, and so that's been an adjustment, but feeling pretty good.
Very nice. And Mr. Markham, how are you doing, man?
Doing well. How'd you guys do week one? Accountability check, I guess.
Sure, yeah. So in my home leagues, I did not awesome. But in my industry leagues, I did okay. So I was actually, I guess it depends on which one you know, which one matters the most. But I had fun either way. To be honest with you, I even though some like most fantasy weeks when I lose a game or I know I'm going to lose a matchup, I kind of like check out. You know what I mean? Just I'm like, all right, is there anything I can do around the house? Because I'm out of it for the rest of the game. Not this week, obviously, because it's week one. It was week one, and we finally got football back. And you know, also I normally don't stay up for the Monday night football games up until like midnight East Coast time, just because it's midnight East Coast time, and I want to sleep. I know it's crazy. I don't really catch like the highlights in the morning or watch the game the next day, but I had no problem staying awake for this game. That was a great way to end week one, just as the Bucks and Cowboys. Yeah, were great to start
bookend with. Yeah, It was. I mean, it was crazy. I can't recall a situation. And you know, in one of my that auction league that I've done, and it was where you know the actual cash. Darren Waller's my starting tight end, and each week, High Points pays out about 330, 340. So I was 6 points away from High Points waiting on Darren Waller. So when they actually kicked the 55-yarder and they had a chance, all I had to do was the same thing that Carr did on the first drive, except with accuracy, where he actually could catch the balls. And you put together 3 for 40 and a touchdown, and I'd be a lot happier. But I guess third place with no money is something fun.
Yay. There you go.
Yay. Hooray. Third place.
Brian, how'd you do?
I am in so many leagues, it's really hard to remember, but the league that I had the most money riding on it, I won. So I guess that works. Yeah.
You know what? That works.
No.
All right. So this week, during our weekly episodes here at Fourth and Frames, we're going to do something a little bit different, or kind of similar, actually, to what we did back in 2019. When Aaron Pags was with us and we had Ken Sonnenberg. We're going to do a lot of recaps of injuries. And I shouldn't say a lot. Hopefully there's not a lot of recaps of injuries to go over. We're going to go over some prime matchups at each position that you should pay attention to. Then our awesome Flex Off segment is coming back. Our bust predictions. And then whatever we decide to wrap up with is what we'll wrap up with. So with that, let's get into some fantasy relevant injuries and information. I think the big one for the week is Raheem Mostert going down, declaring himself out for the season with that, was it chipped cartilage? Like, it wasn't even torn, like chipped cartilage, I think it was, in his knee.
I'm far from an orthopedic surgeon to tell you exactly what that means, but ultimately, if you saw it, that when you say he opted to forego the season is because he feels that he can get back to 110% for next year. Right. After, all the accolades of, I got more muscles, I'm stronger. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm not injury prone.
Right.
Get 2 rushing attempts.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of sad. Like I remember back a couple of years ago when he, this is before the Super Bowl year, and it was a Monday Night Football game in Santa Clara, and I can remember vividly watching the game, and he was going for a rush, and then all of a sudden the camera panned away, and you heard an audible scream of like something like horrific just happened.
Right.
Broke his arm. And you go back over the course of his career since then, just horrible bad luck with injuries. I feel bad for the guy. I really feel bad for the family, to be honest with you. I don't know if you saw the message that his wife put out today that he's apparently getting death threats for costing fantasy managers their season, which to you morons, a-holes out there, stop doing that. That's ridiculous. This is a person's livelihood, not your fantasy matchup for the week. But of course, with him going down and Trey Sermon being inactive last week, the name Elijah Mitchell came up. And yes, I spent 31% of my fab on getting Elijah Mitchell in my biggest money league. So not as much as others have I've seen on Twitter, where people are like emptying the pot or putting in like 80% of their fab. I put 31%, and I'm not even sure I want to start him this week, to be honest with you. It's an interesting situation there. Maybe what are your thoughts on Elijah Mitchell?
Well, and that's Shanahan. I don't know if there's any other word to use besides Shanahan, because would it shock you if it's Trey Sermon with 80% of the workload? No. Would it shock you if it's Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell, which I don't know if Elijah Mitchell's third down back. They seem to have similar roles. So then does Jermichael Hasty come into the conversation? And then who does he take carries away from? Do they just, do they abandon any type of workload totality if you want to? And is it a 35, 25, and fill the rest of the math in there for all of us math whizzes there. But you get the idea is the range of outcomes is that Elijah Mitchell does what he did last week behind one of the best running offenses in football, or they use the draft capital that they spent on Trey Sermon and he takes over and does it, or they split it. And that, unfortunately, 30%, I think, by the way, is an excellent number. I think that's a great bit. I was listening to a few where 60 to 90% was spent, and that's rough. But let's go back. Let's try to, correlation. Let's say, and I hate that when people, myself included, I was getting ready to say, what if he's this year's James Robinson? So what I'm saying is, what if he manages 90% of the workload? That's the team's rushing share. That's not likely. But let's say he turns into their number one. Right. I would spend 100% on San Francisco's number one.
Right. No, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Going over to Cleveland, which congrats on your victory last week, Nate, the Chiefs victory.
Thank you.
Although, to be honest with you, let me tell you, that first half was going exactly as I expected it to go. Defense is strong, holding the Chiefs under a certain amount of points, yardage. Then the second half, that all went to hell. But Brian, one of the wide receivers there for Cleveland, Odell Beckham, apparently he's declared out for another week. What are your thoughts here with Odell Beckham for the Browns?
I don't have too much to say. It's really I thought he'd be pretty much ready to go early in the season, and will be the second week in a row that he's out. I think people are losing patience. They were kind of down on him to begin with. I know, especially in Dynasty, which is where most of my leagues are, there was a lot of people just like, I'm out. So it doesn't look too good.
Yeah, no, and you look at the receiving options there for Cleveland, which something tells me, wink, we'll be getting to those in a few, are kind of scarce. When Austin Hooper has to help pick up the slack in the receiving department, things are kind of not looking good already, even though, Cleveland's a run-oriented team, Speaking of run-oriented teams, however, this team is going to be without, or I don't know if he's technically declared out, or we're just all assuming he's out. Is Saquon out for tomorrow night? Is he questionable, or is he out?
He's not been deemed out.
Okay.
To the best of my, unless I missed something in the drive home getting here. All the last I've seen is that it's just officially questionable, which means nothing. But it's ESPN's Jordan Renan says that it's his understanding that he will play, but then, of course, like you're going to probably allude to, workload management. What are the expectations, Jorge?
Being a Washington fan, my expectation is that he plays and he destroys Washington. Right. Just because I've seen it in history and I've seen how this plays out. The Giants in Washington, it never goes well in the beginning of the season. I'm sure that's expert analysis of what to expect this year as opposed to seasons past. But if he's good to go, look, the football team kept Austin Eckler relatively in check last week. He didn't have a lot of reception upside. It's going to be a conservative game script for New York. I think Saquon, he's going to get his probably near the goal line more so than in the receiving game. I'm actually looking forward to this wide receiver matchup with Galladay and Shepard and Darius Slayton going against the secondary for Washington, because the secondary for Washington played really, really well. They brought over the guy Williams from Cincinnati to be corner. Cameron Curl has a replacement now who played really well last week, whose name is escaping me. So it's going to be a good matchup there in the receiving game. But for Saquon, I'm having modest expectations, but would not be surprised if he blows the roof off the place. Sticking with Washington, however, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he goes on IR 6 to 8 weeks. Enter. I don't know if you all are on Instagram and you follow Pick Six Pod. I think it's like a CBS podcast. And they had a post earlier today where it's like the GOAT makes his first start in the NFL tomorrow, and that's Tyler Heineke. They were referencing him.
Interesting.
Look, I mean, what do I expect? This Giants pass rush, if Leonard Williams gets after it, they could do a lot of damage. The secondary for the Giants is not to be reckoned with. The linebacking core is not to be reckoned with. This is going to be a tough matchup. But you know what? He also had a tough matchup against the Buccaneers in the playoffs, where that defense was pretty awesome. I don't know, Nate, if you recall if they did anything, superb in the Super Bowl or not. I know that was a low blow. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But
at least we made it to the Super Bowl.
Zing. So it's. I don't know whether or not enough practice time has gone down between Sunday and now that you can expect all these weapons for Washington to be, the top caliber ones that you're expecting. I don't know if you're expecting that for Antonio Gibson. Volume probably will be on his side, just because they're probably not going to ask Tyler Heineke to do too much. So volume could be on his side, and as we all know, volume is king in fantasy football. The more opportunities you get, the better. The receiving game, I think that takes a hit. One of the managers who was very adamant about rostering Terry McLaurin, and I don't even know if I'm starting him this week, to be honest with you. I know that's kind of like a bold kind of take there, but it's a tough one when you look at the different options that are available on your waiver wire. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You deserve that. Your mic should go out when you say you're going to sit Terry McLaurin. Your mic just immediately shuts off. And
start your studs. What happened to start your studs?
Exactly. I mean, man, my God, 5 minutes of Tyler Heineke, who I believe he led you and your team, not you personally, unless you were on the team. What are you guys' opinions on that? I really don't care if someone says we're going to win, and they're like, "Are you on the team?" There's no we, because I feel like I can say we. I don't really get, other people get offended. I don't know about offended. Not everybody gets offended, but upset when you claim that we're part of the team or we beat you. Opinions, thoughts?
Yeah. If I'm putting money into that organization's pocket, either with buying merchandise or tickets, guess what? I'm a part of the team. So, Brian, what are your thoughts?
I'm used to it. There are much worse things in this world that I get more angry about than that.
Very fair.
So, if anything, I think Logan Thomas gets a bump up tomorrow night, especially in the red zone area. But anywho, before we get into our prime matchups of the week, where we're looking at a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and IDP option, we have some business to take care of. So, Nate, why don't you get all the good folks on board with why they should visit manscaped.com today?
Oh, well, I mean, the obvious is that you use promo code FRAMES, all caps, save 20%. And if you've like saving money, you can spend the money elsewhere on, I don't know, maybe taking your lady out for a sweet dinner and then bringing her home and, well, maybe checking out the artwork that you may put on with the Manscaped 4.0, the lawnmower. It is by far, hey, you guys laugh all you want.
No,
it is amazing. It is, and it's not even just, you can, waist up, waist down, chin, cheek, ears. I've done, I've touched up my beard. Yes, exactly. Not bad. And I it comes with 2 trimmer guards, which I find are the perfect length. Brian, you might have a little bit of difficulty getting him the 42-inch length, but there's probably an adaptation. If so, use promo code FRAMES.
For his beard, folks. That's what he was talking about, for his beard. Sorry. Yes, that was referencing Brian's beard. Thank you very much.
That's right.
On his face.
Is a podcast also. Not video. Okay,
it also has an LED light for those hard to see places. It works in the shower, which is fantastic. And Teddy Ricketson, who was with us last week, he said, it's great to have one, razor dedicated to one region of my body, and the other one I could, keep to my face. I'm like, that's a very good point. So definitely, I head over to manscaped.com, use the promo code FRAMES, get 20% off your purchase. I think Manscaped. Hope we did your product justice right there. Actually, it's funny, and I won't name names, but a couple coworkers had listened to our show last week, and they came up to me during work the next day, and it's like, a lot of balls talk on your podcast last night. I'm like, yeah, I know. And one of them was like, you know what? I actually have one of those things, and I swear they're fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I didn't need to know, but it is good to know that that people who are unbiased also agree that the lawnmower is an excellent product to try out over at Manscaped. When using the promo code FRAMES, get 20% off your purchase.
No one criticizes you if you say, hey, I got a new toothbrush. It's just hygiene. You know?
That's a good point. I don't know why it's so taboo. That's a good point.
Exactly. Sorry.
I'm okay. That's very good point.
Thank you.
Let's get into our prime matchups of the week. Let's talk about players that we're excited about at their respective positions. I'll start with the quarterback position. I'm excited for Joe Burrow last week. I thought Minnesota's defense was going to be a little bit more ferocious, especially the pass rush against this Bengals offensive line that was not addressed in the offseason, yet managed to keep Burrow pretty upright long enough that he can basically dish it out to every receiving option he has there. You go to, now they're taking on the Bears. We saw what Matt Stafford was able to do with that receiving core. All the receivers caught a touchdown. Cooper Kupp went nuts. Yeah. Nate, it's funny, or I guess it's not funny, but from an IDP perspective, nobody really hypes up Khalil Mack. And so when you and I were we ran into this situation a couple of years ago, we were looking up the stats. Like, he's really good at getting pressures, not really good at like accumulating a huge sack total and getting a lot of these. So he creates the mismatches for other people. The only problem is there's not other people around him to capitalize off the mismatches that he's creating in Chicago. And I think it's as a result of that this offensive line for the Bengals is going to be spared, so to speak, this week. And that's just going to give Burrow plenty of time to unleash. I think he is I think coming back from that ACL, what he's done so far has been fantastic. And I think you're going to see that continue this week for Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Let's go to the wide receiver position. Brian, who do you got here?
So there's a lot of folks that I like this week. I mean, you look at, Sutton versus Jacksonville. You look at the Chargers-Cowboys game that might be a shootout. But I'm going to go with maybe a slightly sneaky option here, and that's Jarvis Landry against Houston. They're a running team, and the game script isn't going to be thrown a lot, but he is unquestionably the wide receiver one with OBJ out. They don't have much else besides that. So I think he could have a good game, and I think he's a good player to get in there as your wide receiver 3 or your flex this week against a bad Houston team.
No, totally get that. Really high on Jarvis Landry this week. Again, that may or may not be coming up later. For the running back position, you know what? This could be hot takey, and I don't really care because I think it's still a good matchup. I'm loving Melvin Gordon this week. I think we all saw that it was a 50-50 time split, I think, with Javonte Williams, the rookie. And he still played really well. He still gets the attempts. He was in scoring position a lot. I just see this. I see him having a really good matchup this week for Denver, just because of the volume that he's going to see. And that's kind of my
he had a huge run, and that made up a lot of that. But
sure,
at the same time, though, I think that was one of the concerns that people had with Melvin Gordon, is that he didn't have that big run left in him. So maybe that's something opportunistic and optimistic moving forward. I, as a Javonte Williams manager, was hoping that he would not show anything, and if I could, maybe highlight the fact that it was after the 70-yard run, he averaged 3 yards per carry. Maybe they'll sit him, and I can start Javonte in a league where I need him really bad because I lost Raheem Mostert.
I mean, look what the Texans were able to do against the Jags. I mean, Mark Ingram got in on the running game. Phillip Lindsay got in the end zone. David Johnson got in the end zone. So
absolutely,
like the Texans kind of like unloaded their barrel there at the running back position, and all of them got some action in the end zone. That sounds kind of horrible to say, but you get what I'm saying. So I see no reason why Melvin Gordon wouldn't be in line to do that, and I think he's going to get the bulk of the carries here this week. IDP option, Nate. Who's the IDP option that you're like, yeah, you know what? I like this guy. I think he's going to do well.
I like the matchup that Rashawn Gary has right this week. So Green Bay last week, if you look at the snap share, and Green Bay, who they played the Detroit Lions, who allowed the most pressures in all of football last week. It is a matchup designed for pure opportunity cost, and the cost of having Rashawn Gary in your starting lineup is basically nothing. He was less than 1% rostered going into this week. I think, if you look at last year to this year, he was playing on 40 to 50% of the snaps. And this year, its sample size is huge. It's 1 week, but at the same time, he appeared in 60% of the snaps. He had effort beyond belief. He was involved in so many different plays that might not show up on the stat sheet, but you have to see him. He was chasing down Jameis, and in that game, it got kind of out of control, so it's hard to pinpoint just one stud. But again, Detroit last week, 28 pressures allowed. 28 pressures allowed. Zadarius Smith was a little banged up, not 100% yet, still in my opinion. I see a rotation going through there. If you look last week, he had 16 rush attempts, 16 total. And what did he do with those 16? He created 4 pressures, 2 hits, and a 26% win rate. I think Rashawn Gary's lined up. They lined him up on both sides. Detroit doesn't exactly know how to protect Jared Goff right now. I think it's an opportunity for double-digit sacks for Rashawn Gary.
Yeah, what he just said. Exactly. Yeah. Rashawn Gary. That's right. I mean, how do you follow that? I mean, come on. All right, folks. Before we get going to our Flex Off segment, let's just talk about the guys over at Dynasty Pandemic. Clay, over on Twitter, you have to find him. I think it's Pandemic Clay, Dynasty Pandemic Clay. I'll have to get his Twitter handle memorized. Look, they're a great website. They want to basically bring the community together, the fantasy football community together. They have a chatter feed that you basically, as soon as you go to dynastypandemic.com, you can just jump right in and start asking questions. And like for those who are fans, they can talk to their favorite analysts over at Dynasty Pandemic, and vice versa. Whether you're a content creator, a fan, especially for content creators, us included, they are all about building this community together in the fantasy football world, especially in the Dynasty community. Look, I can't say enough of good things about the people about Clay and Dynasty Pandemic and what they can do for everybody, whether you're large or small. They foster a really good image of what I think this fantasy football community should be about. There's a lot of negativity. We talked about this last week. So getting these brands together, getting these fans together, and making it so easy to interact with the analysts and the fans, I think, is something that they do best. So head over to dynastypandemic.com today. And with that, it's Flex Off time. And I promise I'll get a drop. Now, I promise I'll get a drop for a Flex Off. And I said this back in 2019 when we did this. And Aaron Pags, if you're listening, I still have not done that, even though I said that I was going to do that 2 years ago. And so basically, how's this going to work? So there's 3 of us right now. And so 2 of us are going to go head to head, giving you our take and our rationale as to why we're high on a player. And it's up for the person who's not participating to judge the arguments of both individuals and decide who made the better argument for their player, thus winning their Flex Off matchup. And so let's just get this thing started. I will be the judge for this first one. Let's go. Brian versus Nate. Y'all are talking some wide receivers. Brian, you will be in the corner of Sterling Shepard. Nate, you will be in the corner of Mike Williams as flex options this week. Brian, give us your argument for Sterling Shepard.
Okay, so Sterling Shepard, I think, is going to be the beneficiary of Daniel Jones having to get rid of the ball quickly with the Washington pass rush. I think that's going to favor targets like Ingram and Shepard more than it will favor a target like Galladay. They're going to be trailing, I think, at some point and going to have to play catch up. So that means more throwing. And as Nate said before the show, he had a good target percentage last week. And Mike Williams, obviously Cowboys are a good matchup. That's I think that's going to be more of a Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler game. And I think Mike Williams is very clearly the third option this week against the Cowboys, and that's my take on Sterling Shepard.
All right, Nate, your rebuttal with Mike Williams.
Well, you touched on the one key factoid of this whole thing is number one, who are they going up against? Clearly, the Giants are facing the Washington football team. The likelihood for a high point total is greatly diminished compared to the shootout that will be the Chargers and the Cowboys. What the Cowboys do last week, They allowed 379 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. Now, granted, that's Tom Brady. We know that that's Tom Brady. But Justin Herbert he's Jorge's number 1. So that obviously is going to be checkmark Nate. We clearly know that when you have Jorge's number 1 quarterback.
Play to the judge. Yeah.
Throwing exactly. who in week 1 threw on 60% of the first downs compared to last year's 45%, which means maybe a little bit less Austin Eckler, a little more diversion and dispersion of the passing game. As you kind of alluded to. Target share. Michael Williams last week, 26%. Sterling Shepard, 25%. Pretty close. Total team pass plays is the part that really I think I can accentuate. 47 total team pass plays last week for the Chargers, 37 for the Giants. And of those, we have to then go back to the end-all be-all. Who's the quarterback in New York? Unfortunately, Danny, as he was Danny Dimes, is more Danny Pennies, and he's throwing of the catchable targets. Mike Williams had nearly twice as many. So he doesn't have to work as hard. I think that when you look at the targets inside the 10, where the scores can obviously be quickly inflated, because I do see very comparables. I think the touchdown upside and the pure offensive firepower that is the Chargers gives me a reason for, I'd say, optimism. And let's not forget, time to throw the ball. What did the Los Angeles Chargers do last week? They allowed a pressure on 12.2% of the plays, the lowest in the NFL. Oh. So he's going to have the time to get the ball out, which pays dividends to Mike Williams, field stretcher. I think that we're going to see a 100-yard and touchdown.
Wow, I don't even know where to begin. So first, Nate, you mentioned my QB1, which I'm still hung up over, which I think is a great way to play to the judge right now.
And after you said Mahomes is going to get outscored by just Lawrence.
You know what? In the first half, he was. All right. Just give me a break on that. All right. How was I? Well, I shouldn't say how was I supposed to. Whatever. Anyhow, moving on from last week. Brian, look, Sterling Shepard, he's had a lot of success versus Washington, regardless of who's been there. I can see him getting a lot of target volume in this game, just because I think Galladay is going to be the primary focus, and then what's the other wide receiver's name that I'm blanking on? Slayton. Darius Slayton. I think he's also going to be a receiving option there, or he's going to demand attention. So I like the Sterling Shepard nod right there. I love Washington, but there's something about them when they play the Giants. It's just, this is the football fan in me coming out, and I'm a little bit hesitant as far as what Washington is going to be able to do tomorrow to stop the receiving game of the Giants. That being said, the thing that Nate said about pressures and not allowing any sack. Who is the rookie? Something Slater. I think Slater's his last name. The rookie left tackle for the Chargers.
Yeah, Rashawn Slater.
Mm-hmm. Zero pressure, like you said, zero pressure, zero sacks, zero everything across the board. And this is going against like the Montez Sweats and the Chase Youngs of Washington.
Exactly.
You get the news today out of Dallas that DeMarcus Lawrence, their edge rusher, is out indefinitely with a broken foot. That right there, the protection and the loss of DeMarcus Lawrence at the pass rushing position for the Cowboys, I think is why I'm going to award Nate the winner in this one. But Brian, you have a chance. You have a chance to even this up one apiece, because you're going to be taking on me and my flawed logic next. Okay. As we're addressing running back. And I'm going to be in the corner of Myles Gaskin, and you're going to be in the corner of Damian Harris. Okay. So I'll start us off. Myles Gaskin, look, the Bills, it's a tough matchup. Look, they shut down for the most part Najee Harris last week, but they were susceptible in the passing game. You get a good mixture from Myles Gaskins, or at least you got a good mixture from him last week in both the rushing attempts and the targets out of the backfield. PFF grades the Bills out 21st against the run, believe it or not, even though isn't that kind of odd that they're rated 21st against the run, even though Najee Harris didn't really have a great game. Granted, this Bills team was getting to Ben Roethlisberger, applying a lot of pressure, so maybe they just didn't have a chance to establish the run too much there. But the 18th in coverage is what gets me. You look at Miami, and what is their offense predicated on? What is something that we assume that it was going to be predicated on in the offseason? You got Will Fuller, you got Devontae Parker, you got Jalen Waddle, you got Mike Gesicki stretching the field, opening things up for Myles Gaskin. I think, with Fuller coming back in this week, with all the receiving options on the table, that is going to make this defense stay honest. And I think that's why you're going to see Myles Gaskin utilized in the same way as he was last week. Probably get more in the target volume department. Definitely going to get all the goal line work. You look at, people were concerned about Malcolm Brown coming in there, and he's going to take, so many attempts and so much opportunity away from Myles. No, he's not. It's Myles Gaskin's backfield. So give me Myles Gaskin this week. And then now, Brian, Damian Harris.
Damian Harris. Okay, so as much as in the offseason I spoke a little bit about Ramondre Stevenson could be a thing, we look at the trust that Damian Harris got from the team last week, getting 23 carries, over 100 yards, against a not so bad, Dolphins defense. And now this week he's up against a worse defense, the Jets. Should probably be playing with a lead, so game script probably favors them chewing up some clock at some point and him getting the rock. And you look at Gaskin going up against Buffalo, who held Najee Harris to 45 yards last week. And I think, the Bills throw a lot. And I think Tua, with now Fuller added this week, might have to chuck the ball a little more to catch up and keep up with a Bills offense, which may limit Gaskin's usefulness. So as much as I hate the Patriots, give me Damian Harris.
Yeah, the aspect of this whole scenario is to keep your heart away from it, and I do hate New England. A lot of that stems from time here in St. Louis and cheating on it, and had nothing to do with Damian Harris. Damian Harris was probably 11 years old at the time, and Doug's trying to jump on the Sterling Shepard bandwagon.
Yeah, I think that's what Doug's trying to do.
Oh, he's saying the Giants could not stop it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. So you better. Don't be trying to sway this opinion, Doug. We don't need Judge Doug or, I guess plaintiff. I shouldn't say
so Oklahoma Doug came on. So for those listening, Oklahoma Doug came on and said Giants could not stop crossing routes versus Denver to save their lives. Hamler, Fenton Company were,
Albert Okwuegbunam.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love how you had that ready to go. They could not do anything there outside of Logan Thomas and Terry McLaurin, who could take advantage. Teddy would say J.D. McKissick.
Yeah, he would.
Yeah. But anyhow.
I would. And I would point to the 0.8 points that he scored last week.
Yeah.
And, and he would be mad at me. And I digress. Let's get back to how Brian can win this battle. Unbiased, of course. I think that the hard part is that the compelling arguments can be made, and ultimately it stops at the door of what I deem the production and how you have facilitated those trigger points for me. And the way I'm triggered from this whole scenario is that if Najee Harris is stuffed, there's no way in my belief of beliefs that Myles Gaskin can be involved enough to offset 20-plus touches from Damian Harris and 20-plus effective touches too. It wasn't just 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It was very hard-hitting through the holes, which New England's offensive line looked good. Their defense obviously is improved, which means, like you said, against the Jets, you don't have to be much improved. I'm not trying to compare him to Christian McCaffrey. That's an unfair correlation. Christian McCaffrey just, ran all over him. But what involvement will Will Fuller have on the passing game and the overall look? I mean, as a field stretcher, I think Tua would love to get the ball to him. I don't want to insult Dolphins fans. I don't know if Tua can get the ball to him. Mm-hmm. And so you wonder about the underneath passes a little bit to Gaskin. As a whole, I'm going to have to go by what I think my overall projections, because both are compelling, and I'm going to have to lean the side of Damian Harris. in this matchup.
Congrats,
so Jorge.
All right.
Redemption.
It is not against you. It is you unfortunately took the side. Had you taken Damian Harris's side, unless you really, really fumbled the ball bad.
Like Damian Harris did in the fourth quarter of the game last week.
Happens. Yes.
All right, let's go with our final flex off matchup for the night. I'll be in the corner of Jarvis Landry. Told you his name would come up later. And Nate, you'll be in the corner of Devonta Smith, rookie wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles. Why don't you go first? Why should people take Devonta Smith this week?
So we touched a little bit early. Well, we didn't. Brian did, unless the collective we, the royal we, as Fantasy and Frames totality, thought that it's going to be a Cleveland run-heavy game. And we know that's going to be the case. And I think that that's evident that they're going to control the ground. That being said, Philadelphia does not have that same luxury, I don't believe, against the San Francisco 49ers team that is, still reeling a little bit after that potential comeback from Detroit. I know that a win's a win, but that's not a good win. That's not the win they want to take with them. So they're going to come out, and Philly defense looked better, but their offense was vastly improved. Jorge, what week was it you said that Jalen Hurts is going to be removed?
In my bold predictions.
Your bold prediction?
Which is just a bold prediction.
You said week 7?
Week 7, week 8, yeah.
So speaking of the number 7, 77 is the passing completion that Jalen Hurts had last week, which was the third highest in week 1 of all quarterbacks. Dak Prescott, Tyler Heineke, even Trevor Lawrence. And what does that mean? That means that the improvements are there. We have to focus on that aspect of the game. Clearly, the quarterback is going to dictate how I feel and how comfortable I am with a 6-catch, 71, and a touchdown performance on 8 targets. Jason Verrett, the corner for the 49ers, gone. The secondary for the 49ers, weak. Oklahoma Doug is on here, and I'm waiting for him because I know he's a 49ers fan to jump in and tell me just how important Jaquiski Tart and the other bums in that backfield are going to make an impression. It's not a knock on them, but let's be honest. Their secondary
it's not a knock
is
on them
weak.
when you call them bums. It's okay. Yeah,
it's okay. But it's true, though. Their secondary is weak.
It's true. They are bums. What are you talking about?
Hey, he led the Eagles wide receiver group last week in targets. He was underneath. He was a safety blanket for Jalen Hurts. And let's be honest, personally speaking, I just think that it's going to be much more run-heavy opportunity, and I think Philly's going to have to pass it more, and that to me is a simple way to get fantasy points.
Okay, you bring up really good points here. Let's go to why I think Jarvis Landry should be the flex play option right here. Last week, he was tied for the most targets by a wide receiver for Cleveland. That was 5, and the second person was Anthony Schwartz, who's questionable this week. 5 for 5, 100% completion percentage, 14.2 yards per target, yards per reception. Look, he leads the team in targets. He led the team in fantasy points from a wide receiver position. Houston last week against Jacksonville was very big on giving up the big pass play. I know Jarvis Landry is a slot receiver. He kind of goes over the middle of the field, but I think the target volume is going to be there. He's not like he can't go deep. I think if anything, if I'm Baker Mayfield, I'm a little bit upset. I played to the game script the coaches wanted me to. I didn't have to do too much. I stuck to our MO, let the running game dominate things in Kansas City, and we still lost the game. I think this is I got a chip on my shoulder and I want to pick on somebody type of game. And I think if Trevor Lawrence can air it out against this Texans team, even though granted they were playing from behind, I get it. There is some garbage time stuff that you can correlate to that. I think Cleveland comes out motivated, pissed off that they lost that game on Sunday. And seeing as how Jarvis Landry is
got whooped, beat up and down that field. It was embarrassing for Cleveland.
Wow. Anyhow, I think just because of the target volume, Jarvis Landry is going to get you another high teens, double-digit fantasy point production, which is why I think you should take him over Devonta Smith, who, let's face it, everyone on the Eagles was scoring against the Falcons last week. I don't know if you're going to see the exact same thing again this week. So give me Jarvis Landry.
Oh, that's a good one. With Devonta Smith, Hurts looked really good last week. Devonta Smith looked good last week, granted against a bad Atlanta team. With Landry, I chose him as my sneaky play, as a matchup against Houston. I do like it. I do think the targets will be there. I'm gonna ultimately have to go, I think, with Devonta Smith, and this comes down to me as a game script question. I just can really see that second half, where Cleveland is just pounding the run because they're already up for a bit. Whereas I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen with Philly. So ultimately, I will choose Devonta Smith. Sorry, Jorge.
Went 0-2 in the first flex-off matchup of the 2021 fantasy football season.
If that means anything, is that we know that Sterling Shepard's going to be the wide receiver 3 on the week. We know that Jarvis Landry is going to be the wide receiver 4, and we know that Damian Harris is going to put up 2 rushing attempts for -2 and a fumble and be out of the game, and it's going to be Ramondre Stevenson and James White the rest of the afternoon. So, nice. Sorry, all of you fantasy managers of those players.
Yeah, I'll put these polls out there on Twitter and see what people think. Shepard versus Williams, Gaskin versus Harris, and Landry versus Smith. And we'll see during the 4-Eyed pregame show what the results are on Sunday at 11 a.m. But as we've been talking about great matchups and great flex people to put in your flex spot, let's talk about some bust predictions. A player that we're projecting to underperform. Breaking news.
I don't know what. Sorry about that.
Player to underperform. I'm going to go with DJ Chark. He had 10.6 fantasy points last week in half PPR scoring. He got that touchdown. Going against Denver, and look, I know that they lost the Broncos. That is lost Ronald Darby today, and Patrick Surtain the second is now the starting cornerback for the Broncos. So that kind of opens up some vulnerability in the secondary. That being said, Denver was really good in allowing a good number of first downs. I think they were fifth best last week in allowing the number of first downs with 17. The yards per reception that they were allowing to wide receivers was 7.1. I'm seeing this being a LaVisca game, in that with this pass rush for Denver, they're going to have to get this ball out really quickly for Jacksonville, that is. And it's, apparently James Robinson doesn't exist anymore, which is great. Not really, as somebody who's heavily invested. So I'm going to say this is a Visca game, and they're going to kind of therefore not be able to really set up that long ball as much to DJ Chark. So fade DJ Chark this week. Brian, who do you got?
So I'm going to go. I'm going to stay in the same game where my wide receiver matchup was, and that's the Cleveland-Houston game. And my bust is going to be Tyrod Taylor. I think he, had a good game against a really bad team, and I just don't think going against Cleveland with Myles Garrett, and they have a pretty good secondary too. He is in for a big dip between week 1 and 2. If you have a super flex and you lost Ryan Fitzpatrick as your second QB, okay, fine, you might want to throw in Tyrod Taylor because he's the third one on your team, or maybe he was on the waiver wire or something like that. But I think he's gonna. His stock is going down between week 1 and 2, and he is my bust.
Mm-hmm. And Nate, can you round us out? Who is a bust performer this week for you think?
We talked about him briefly in the injury talk up. Is Saquon Barkley? You draft him with top, I'd say into the first, early second round draft capital. You have a hard time not starting him, but when he's getting in limited practices, that offensive line isn't exactly great, and they're going against that Washington stout front and just overall game script. I can see them not wanting to. Here's the thing: you want to keep obviously Saquon available for as long as the season as possible. Throw him to the Wolves of Washington which maybe that's a name. Interesting.
Red Wolves. Yeah, I don't
Red
like
Wolves
it.
of Washington. Regardless,
God.
I think that it's one of those situations that you have a hard time not taking him out of your lineup or not keeping him in. But let me ask you guys a question: Saquon or James Robinson right now?
Man, I don't trust Urban Meyer, so I'm going to go Saquon.
And you don't feel good about it, do you?
No, I do not.
That's not a good sign. If that's what you have to figure out, that to me has bust written all over it.
No, that's a good point. Okay, so with that, that's going to wrap up our first episode of Fourth and Frames tonight. In about 15 minutes, we're going to have our IDP edition with Mike Wollert from 444 Fantasy Football join us. And we're basically going to be doing the exact same thing just for all IDP players. So for all you IDP managers out there or fans, stay tuned for that at 9 p.m. Eastern. And of course, for all of us here at Fantasy and Frames, for the most part, I don't know exactly which combination of all of us are going to be there on Sunday, but come on Sunday. What's up?
I said, who knows?
We'll figure it out between now and Sunday for the 4-Eyed pregame show at 11 a.m. Eastern. Like last week, we're going to be talking about matchups we like. We're going to be talking about players at every position outside the top 25 that we like this week. And we're also going to go over our Monkey Night Fight prop bet predictions as well as answer all of your start and sit questions. So tune in on Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern for the 4-Eyed pregame show. Our week 1 recap came out this week. Our waiver wire articles came out. If there are players that are still, if your rosters are still in need of players, check out our waiver wire articles. Maybe they're still on the waiver wire. We have now our matchups of the week articles coming out. We have quarterbacks and tight ends tomorrow, running backs the day after. Then we got running backs and IDPs. We got all these matchups that we're going to be profiling this week for players that you think you should pay attention to. So check that out. And so for Brian, for Nate, I'm Jorge. We will see you next week. Take it easy, folks.